Chapter 6 of Pellucidar. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Ralph Snelson. Pellucidar by Edgar Rice Burroughs. Chapter 6. A Pendent World. The Mahars set me free as they had promised, but with strict injunctions never to approach Phutra or any other Mahar city. They also made it perfectly plain that they considered me a dangerous creature, and that having wiped the slate clean in so far as they were under obligations to me, they now considered me fair prey. Should I again fall into their hands, they intimated it would go ill with me. They would not tell me in which direction Hooja had set forth with Diane, so I departed from Phutra filled with bitterness against the Mahars and rage toward the sly one who had once again robbed me of my greatest treasure. At first I was minded to go directly back to Anauroch, but upon second thought turned my face toward Sari, as I felt that somewhere in that direction Hooja would travel, his own country lying in that general direction. Of my journey to Sari it is only necessary to say that it was fraught with the usual excitement and adventure incident to all travel across the face of savage Pellucidar. The dangers, however, were greatly reduced through the medium of my armament. I often wondered how it had happened that I had ever survived the first 10 years of my life within the inner world, when naked and primitively armed I had traversed great areas of her beast-ridden surface. With the aid of my map, which I had kept with great care during my march with the Sagoths in search of the great secret, I arrived at Sari at last. As I topped the lofty plateau in whose rocky cliffs the principal tribe of Sarians find their cave homes, a great hue and cry arose from those who first discovered me. Like wasps from their nests, the hairy warriors poured from their caves. The bows with their poison-tipped arrows, which I had taught them to fashion and to use, were raised against me. Swords of hammered iron, another of my innovations, menaced me, as with lusty shouts the horde charged down. It was a critical moment. Before I should be recognized, I might be dead. It was evident that all semblance of intertribal relationship had ceased with my going, and that my people had reverted to their former savage, suspicious hatred of all strangers. My garb must have puzzled them too, for never before, of course, had they seen a man clothed in khaki and puttees. Leaning my express rifle against my body, I raised both hands aloft. It was the peace sign that is recognized everywhere upon the surface of Pellucidar. The charging warriors paused and surveyed me. I looked for my friend Gok, the hairy one, king of Sari, and presently I saw him coming from a distance. Ah, but it was good to see his mighty, hairy form once more. A friend was Gok, a friend well worth the having, and it had been some time since I had seen a friend. Shouldering his way through the throng of warriors, the mighty chieftain advanced toward me. There was an expression of puzzlement upon his fine features. He crossed the space between the warriors and myself, halting before me. I did not speak. I did not even smile. I wanted to see if Gok, my principal lieutenant, would recognize me. For some time he stood there looking me over carefully. His eyes took in my large pith helmet, my khaki jacket and bandoliers of cartridges, the 2 revolvers swinging at my hips, the large rifle resting against my body. Still I stood with my hands above my head. He examined my puttees and my strong tan shoes, a little the worse for wear now. Then he glanced up once more to my face. As his gaze rested there quite steadily for some moments, I saw recognition tinged with awe creep across his countenance. Presently, without a word, he took one of my hands in his and dropping to one knee, raised my fingers to his lips. Perry had taught them this trick, nor ever did the most polished courtier of all the grand courts of Europe perform the little act of homage with greater grace and dignity. Quickly I raised Gok to his feet, clasping both his hands in mine. I think there must have been tears in my eyes then. I know I felt too full for words. The king of Sari turned toward his warriors. "Our emperor has come back," he announced. "Come hither and—" But he got no further, for the shouts that broke from those savage throats would have drowned the voice of heaven itself. I had never guessed how much they thought of me. As they clustered around, almost fighting for the chance to kiss my hand, I saw again the vision of empire which I had thought faded forever. With such as these I could conquer a world; with such as these I would conquer one. If the Saurians had remained loyal, so too would the Amozite be loyal still, and the Kalians, and the Suevians, and all the great tribes who had formed the federation that was to emancipate the human race of Pellucidar. Perry was safe with the Mezops, I was safe with the Saurians. Now if Diane were but safe with me, the future would look bright indeed. It did not take long to outline to Gok all that had befallen me since I had departed from Pellucidar, and to get down to the business of finding Diane, which to me at that moment was of even greater importance than the very empire itself. When I told him that Hooja had stolen her, he stamped his foot in rage. "It is always the sly one," he cried. "It was Hooja who caused the first trouble between you and the beautiful one. It was Hooja who betrayed our trust and all but caused our recapture by the Sagos that time we escaped from Phutra. It was Hooja who tricked you and substituted a Mahar for Diane when you started upon your return journey to your own world. It was Hooja who schemed and lied until he had turned the kingdoms one against another and destroyed the federation. When we had him in our power, we were foolish to let him live. Next time—" Gok did not need to finish his sentence. "He has become a very powerful enemy now," I replied. "That he is allied in some way with the Mahars is evidenced by the familiarity of his relations with the Sagoths, who were accompanying me in search of the great secret, for it must have been Hooja whom I saw conversing with them just before we reached the valley. Doubtless they told him of our quest, and he hastened on ahead of us, discovered the cave, and stole the document. Well does he deserve his appellation of the Sly One." With Gok and his head men I held a number of consultations. The upshot of them was a decision to combine our search for Diane with an attempt to rebuild the crumbled federation. To this end 20 warriors were dispatched in pairs to 10 of the leading kingdoms, with instructions to make every effort to discover the whereabouts of Hooja and Diane, while prosecuting their missions to the chieftains to whom they were sent. Gok was to remain at home to receive the various delegations which we invited to come to Sari on the business of the federation. 400 warriors were started for Anrock to fetch Perry and the contents of the prospector to the capital of the empire, which was also the principal settlements of the Sarians. At first it was intended that I remain at Sari, that I might be in readiness to hasten forth at the first report of the discovery of Diane; but I found the inaction in the face of my deep solicitude for the welfare of my mate so galling that scarce had the several units departed upon their missions before I too chafed to be actively engaged upon the search. It was after my second sleep subsequent to the departure of the warriors, as I recall, that I at last went to Gok with the admission that I could no longer support the intolerable longing to be personally upon the trail of my lost love. Gok tried to dissuade me, though I could tell that his heart was with me and my wish to be away and really doing something. It was while we were arguing upon the subject that a stranger, with hands above his head, entered the village. He was immediately surrounded by warriors and conducted to Gok's presence. The fellow was a typical cave man, squat, muscular and hairy, and of a type I had not seen before. His features, like those of all the primeval men of Pellucidar, were regular and fine. His weapons consisted of a stone axe and knife and heavy knobbed bludgeon of wood. His skin was very white. "Who are you?" asked Gok, "and whence come you?" "I am Kok, son of Gork, who is the chief of the Thurians," replied the stranger. "From Thuria I have come in search of the land of Amos, where dwells Dakor, the strong one, who stole my sister Kanda, the graceful one, to be his mate. We